This is Housebound. I'm Chris.
I'm Holly.
I'm Ashlynn.
I'm Greg.
And you're invited.
Welcome to Housebound, a podcast we made because we needed company. In it, we talk about things that are on our minds, and today we're talking about living in a post-COVID world. Maybe to start off with, rather than just starting with focusing on the future, let's maybe take a look back and see. It's now our 12th episode, so we've been going for like 3 months, which has been incredible. And we started this whole thing when the whole house isolation thing began. So maybe the question that I should pose would be, what do you guys think is different from what you predicted, looking from that first month to now? Like, what are some of the things that maybe didn't quite go as you would have predicted?
Well, I think this was slightly before when we first started recording this podcast. But I remember when like restaurants and venues and stuff like that first shut down, they were talking about the 10-day isolation, how everyone needed to like isolate for 10 days. So when everything shut down, they were like, yeah, we'll be closed for 10 days. And then within like 4 or 5 days, it was quite clear that this was going to be a lot longer than 10 days. But I find it so funny just thinking back to that time and how so many businesses were like, yeah, this is like a 2-week thing. You know, it's just a season.
I remember the very first couple of, again, just prior to starting our podcast and into the first week or two after that, that was already a couple weeks into the social distancing thing and the self-quarantining. And I perceived everything as a much bigger deal back then than I do 3 months later. Not that I didn't think that any of it was important, but when I heard the terms self-distancing and social isolation and things like that, I was still in a state of trying to figure out what did the government mean when they said that. And now when I hear them say something like that and say, well, we're going into phase 3 or phase 4 and we're allowing groups of up to X number of people get together, I already have a standard of what to expect as a minimum. And then I'm just opening up that standard a little bit wider and a little bit wider each phase that we go through. But at the very beginning, it was just a lot of learning because I've never lived through something like this, whether or not you believe that it's an entirely serious situation or it's a little bit of overkill. I still had not experienced something like this. And so just hearing people talk about, well, you know, when it was the war, people had to be careful as to how often they went out and they had to ration supplies and they had to do this and that. And they were kind of comparing it in a sense to that. And I was thinking, oh, okay, this is the first tangible way that I can relate to that even remotely, because I've just been free to do whatever my whole life, essentially. And so, yeah, it was definitely a learning experience. And I've definitely, I guess, chilled out and calmed down from those first couple of weeks and not taken things less seriously, but just been able to put them into a context and appreciate them in a different light. So,
do you think you're less like anxious and just more calm about the situation because there's a lower overall sense of urgency about the situation, or are you just used to that terminology being talked about, and so when they make a new announcement, it's like, oh, I know what they're talking about and this makes sense?
Yeah, I think it's both. And we're hearing it every day on the radio, we're seeing it every day in our social media feeds, and it's, again, I'm not taking it lightly per se, but I am becoming more accustomed to it, and so as a result, that makes me less nervous about what's going to happen next. I'm mostly in a state of, okay, this is a new normal. So I also did think right off the bat that it was only going to be a couple of weeks. Like I remember the 10-day isolation thing or the 10-day social distancing thing. And then it was 2 weeks. and then it was international flights. And as soon as it hit international flights being not permitted anymore, we started having to cancel whatever activities trips we were thinking of taking, or even movies were refunding our tickets because we pre-purchased tickets. And so that's when I was kind of like, oh no, am I going to be stuck in my house for months? Like, is this what? I don't know how to do that, so.
Well, I will teach you. Because that is all I have wanted to do, but I have had to continue working. And this is the greatest, like, what's the word that's not actually the thing, but there's a song about it?
Letdown?
Irony.
Oh.
It's just the biggest irony. Everybody else is like, oh, I don't know what to do with myself in my house. And I'm just like, I just want to be in my house. Just let me stay there for 3 months. Nope. Not allowed. Ah, well.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say that, like, for myself, I have, like, while I've been able to work at home, I have a similar sentiment to Holly in the sense that I have enjoyed being at home. I am the kind of person where that is where I thrive. I am not the kind of person who I find I get, just like refreshed from being at home, reading a book, playing a game, whatever, just like hanging out here, watching a movie. But I think what surprised me the most, just because of my own character and how I enjoy that, was seeing how much this whole house thing has affected other people, like friends, family, coworkers, and seeing them like wrestle through all of these.
Get pleasure from their discomfort.
Yeah, like just like seeing
Play
them
a little game, I'll watch.
But no, like just seeing them wrestle through like the stresses that are coming in, and just like the anxiety, and just like things, it really has messed with a lot of people just being at home. And because I think, like us as a culture, we are used to going out and doing things. And for those who are super social. So for me, I think that was the biggest thing, was actually like hearing how people were doing and being like, oh, okay, this is like, for some people, this is pretty serious, being like stuck at home this whole time and just not being able to like actually go do something. And I think a part of it also is that going out and doing things helps to like distract you as well from like things that are happening, and like,
oh yeah.
And so there's that part of it where it's like, it helps you just be able to take a mental break. And so, whereas if life at home is stressful, and then you're stuck at home now, so it's your 24/7 life, like there's no reprieve. And so that was, I think, what surprised me the most, was just seeing how it affected other people for this. So yeah.
One of those people you're watching is definitely your wife, who is trying to make it work.
Well, you have done incredibly well compared to some other people. So,
only because of Animal Crossing.
Yes. Once Animal Crossing launched,
what a blessing!
We were golden.
Oh,
that was
yes.
a true gift from above. So, or at least
nobody could have planned that better.
Yeah.
Is this going to be the flashback episode, or the point in the episode where we do a flashback to the first episode where we talk about Ashlynn just got Animal Crossing and Chris just started playing Assassin's Creed?
Yeah.
And I borrowed my brother's gaming console. He has a few, and so I borrowed his PS3 because he wasn't using that. And I started playing through the Assassin's Creed games, and I just started the second one. It's taken me probably 2 weeks of like 2-hour shifts on the console to get through the first one. That first game never ends. And
I love how you're calling them shifts as if it's like intensive work.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, I have also been gaming, but it has been Animal Crossing, New Horizons, all
Very
day, every
different
day.
From Assassin's Creed, other than like the fact that the initials are the same.
I'm playing AC. You don't know how cool I am.
ACNH.
I mean, Tom Nook is definitely murdering people in secret.
Yeah, which one are you on now, Chris?
And now Ashlynn's wrapped the game, and Chris is on game 5 of the series or whatever.
That's where we'll do like that sound effect that's like whoosh, and then it'll like play
Yeah,
it, and then it'll take us back. Yeah.
The jingle, the
Nice.
turning time backwards jingle.
Yeah.
All right. I trust in your editing skills, Chris, to pull that off.
Okay, great.
Production.
I'll also be certain to throw in the clip from the trailer where we talk about how we don't have to talk about COVID in this podcast.
Yeah.
We can talk about other things because people are already going to be talking about podcasts. And in fact, I'm pretty sure that when I was going through podcast names and things online, I saw a whole bunch. I probably came across a couple dozen podcasts just naturally that were talking about COVID-19
Yeah.
and had been started because of COVID-19. And I don't know where they're at now. Like, I'd be interested to go back and try to find some of them, see how many episodes they've got, not to compare, but just to see, what did they do? What did they make out of it? But
Yeah. I think what's nice about speaking from this vantage point now is it's summer, people are out, it's not like things are still different, but we can people can sort of see a bit of a light at the end of the tunnel somewhat. So
Yeah.
even if there is a second wave or whatever like that, this is still a chance for us to be able to have a bit of a reprieve from what's been going on. So yeah, I think that's why, even though we kind of said we're not necessarily going to talk about COVID in this podcast, I think it is nice to be able to kind of take a bit of a retrospective look back, but then also looking forward into how do you think all of this has affected future life? What do you think a post-COVID world is going to look like once everything's done? Once there's, if there's any kind of second wave or whatever, once everything is done, we're back to kind of a more normal life. What do you think will be different? What won't be normal?
I don't know what I actually think will happen, but I have a thing that I want to stay the same or
Okay.
to happen because it actually hasn't happened yet. So professional sports all got canceled almost immediately when COVID started up in Canada and the States. And one of the ideas that they've been thinking about to get things going again, specifically for the NBA and the WNBA, is that so ESPN is actually owned by Disney, which I think is a crazy thing that I never knew. And they would really like to be able to show things on their channel again. And so they have pitched that basically they take all of the NBA and WNBA and put them in hotels at a Disney resort that already has, I can't remember if it's Disney World or Disneyland. That's why I say Disney Resort. Because they already have 21 NBA sized courts there. And then everybody that plays the sport and would do their laundry and cook them food and everything would live in those hotels, and they would have the season in a bubble basically, so that COVID can't get them.
Big Brother, but for sports.
And
you can make a reality TV show spin-off of that, though, too.
Yes. And so this idea is just
oh boy.
There's a genre of sci-fi that isn't so sci-fi that people are like, oh, that could never happen. It's just I don't know a better way to say it other than softcore sci-fi.
Right.
I don't.
Yeah, I understand.
I don't know what it's called really, but that's basically what this is. Our sports teams all have to live in isolation while they do their training, while they do their playing, and everybody that has anything to do with them is in isolation. It's such a sci-fi idea. So I hope that happens. I'm sure that the players don't.
That's a book that you read in grade 11 in English class and then do an essay on.
Yeah.
Totally.
It's such a neat idea.
It's interesting.
I feel if they actually did a TV show or whatever of what they're up to, it would be less exciting than we'd hope, because they're not TV personalities.
Probably.
They're
for sure.
they're professionals in their field. So they're a professional physiotherapist or, janitor or athlete.
Yeah.
But
absolutely.
not a TV personality.
Yeah.
I also am not certain whether my pitch for the future post COVID-19, and again, like Greg said, this all being the fact that we're just in the middle of the reopening phases of our province. We're not at the end of it even, so there's still a little ways to go. But I'm also uncertain as to whether or not this will happen. But because of the amount of people that didn't have anything else to do, and eventually, whether by pressure or just by default, ventured outside and discovered parks and walks and bikes and skateboarding and just physical exercise that was more just activity rather than a sweaty process of going to a gym and then being
Rather
smelly
than a
for an hour or
sweaty
two.
process.
That sweaty process.
Just like doing it for your own health and just maintaining shape, not even necessarily getting shredded or anything, but just maintaining a healthy lifestyle in that way, shape, or form. And that's myself included. Like, I wonder if there will be a surge, not just a temporary New Year's Day solution surge, but like a surge in this will be measured over time, obviously, of people that take their health a little bit more seriously. So whether that's their eating habits or their eating out habits, I'm not sure how the restaurants will see that shift either, but it does have the potential to affect many different markets. And you see the surge when you go into some place like Walmart and Sport Check, and all the dumbbells are completely sold out of the shelves, and they're not getting any back for a while because all of their suppliers are sold out as well. And people have just bought bikes left, right, and center, and training equipment because they had these big ideas of doing stuff at home. And then you go onto Facebook Marketplace and Kijiji and you see, oh, some of those are coming back, but some of those means that a majority or a good percentage of them are still out there. And so I'm curious. I wonder if that will, change maybe even just a generation, or if it will simply be like a one and done kind of phase of all of our lives. Remember that one time that I was physically active?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, even for us, like, we've been like specifically walking every day, and it's great. And it's something that we've built into our routine. And so it's like you said, it's not a specific workout, and we're not super taking our health that much more seriously. It's just a routine that we've made, and so we may actually continue it, which would be wonderful.
Yeah, and even then it's gotten warmer and restrictions have opened up. I've watched myself slip more and more in that routine, but it's interesting in the first place because we made that space because there was nothing else happening. And now when it's the evening and it's around 7:00, I look at my watch and I go, well, we're probably not going to bed until like roughly around 10:30 anyways. And it doesn't even get dark until 9:30, 10 anyways. So even at 9, we could say, hey, let's go for a walk. And even if it's only half an hour, that's maybe a third of the activity that you need to do for the day or something like that. So
That's still pretty good.
Which we should do that.
okay, yeah,
Let's
guys,
just pause here.
we'll be right back. Just hold on.
I still need 5,000 steps today, Chris.
Yeah.
I think one thing for myself that has already changed just because of the pandemic, and then I'm curious as to how it'll stick, is pre-pandemic Ashlynn. I'm the kind of person who, I guess opposites attract, because I am not like Greg in this, where an evening, even just like a weeknight, that I don't leave the house always feels kind of to me like a wasted evening. Unless I like had somebody over to the house or something like that. But if it were just like the two of us in the house after work until the end of the night, like it feels like, even if I was busy and doing stuff, it feels like I wasted the evening somehow. And then it's especially like 10 times like that if it's on a weekend day where I didn't leave the house. It just feels like completely bonkers.
I feel
it doesn't feel right. Like I should have left the house at some point. And so, but now because of the pandemic, it was recommended that you don't leave the house unless you need to go get groceries or whatever it need be. So because of that, I think that helped to be able to rationalize in my brain, being like, no, like staying home is a good thing. Staying home is the right thing to do. This isn't wasting your day. This is the best thing you could do with your day, is choosing to stay home, which I think helped a lot with the like merging process into staying home all the time. But I'm really curious, in a post-COVID world, how much of that I'll keep, or if I'll just immediately switch back to the mindset where if I didn't leave the house all day, I must have like squandered the entire day, no matter what I was doing. So I'm really curious as to how that'll balance out, or if I'll be more content just being able to stay in my home. I don't know. That's something I'm curious about. I don't think I can make firm bets yet.
I have my fingers crossed that it has changed. But yeah, I think for me, what I'm interested to see change is within the Christian community and the definition of what church is, how that's going to play into it. Because what COVID has forced church institutions to do is to actually either they choose to not do anything about it and they just say, okay, we're putting it on pause, or they'll offer up like an online sermon and maybe like some music or something that they'll like record. And this is where like our home church has done, is to actually not just have like a sermon online, but also to have like a Zoom after party thing where we all like get on and kind of chat about what we just watched, and then also take part in kind of like the communion meal, which is, a very symbolic thing that a lot of churches do on, a semi-regular basis. So, and so what's interesting is seeing how the different churches have approached it during this COVID season, and how, like, I know for sure that there are people who have realized that church isn't about content, it's about community. And that for some churches where they just push out the sermon online, that hasn't been enough for a lot of people, because it is ultimately about being together and a community. And so what our church has done, for example, to have that extra added feature of the Zoom and still being able to, while it's not great, it still is a little bit of extra like contact with the community itself. And so I think that's helped
Makes
us
a
at
big
least,
difference.
us at least get through that part. But it'll be interesting to see how people then approach church, realizing that it's not about a sermon-centric service, but it's actually about being gathering together as a group of people. And so that will either shape how maybe the church service is formed around, or what that's about. But this whole thing will also shape how much flack we give. There's some churches that I think there was one that was like an online church in the States that got like a bunch of flack for being like, you're an online church, what are you doing? And this was like a couple years ago or whatever.
Yeah.
And little did they know that they were actually prepping themselves
Right.
So
quite
far
well.
ahead of us all.
Yeah. So
We're the only ones who were prepared.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I think what I've at least realized from this is that you can get a sense of community even over the distance. And so this even goes beyond just like church or any kind of like religious institution, but actually like engaging in relationships, and how like even us as like a group of 4 can do podcasts like this, or can just hang out and just chat over Zoom and still have still keep up and build up that relationship. So while it's not everything, it still is something. And so, yeah, it'll be interesting to kind of see what that does in a post-COVID world, and how that'll shape either church and also just relationships and community in general, right? So
I think that works really well into what we could consider our next point, but has already been what we're talking about in some aspects. Is I've been thinking, like Greg, you posed, what do you think is going to change because of this? Because of once we get out of COVID scenarios and situations and lockdowns and whatnot, what's going to change. But I've also been thinking about what will we as a society choose to change. So what kinds of things has this time forced us to reevaluate or reconstruct, and what will we choose to change going forward? And one thing that I already am hearing about happening is there are several big businesses that have online presences who have made this decision to go either permanently or move something like 85% work from home and online services from here on out. Because whether or not,
how much cheaper would that be?
well, that's
Like,
and it's
you don't have
whether-
to have a big building. Sorry.
and that's it.
Yeah. You don't have to necessarily pay for the utilities for everything either, right? Like people are using their own
The janitor
electricity.
staff, the
Yeah.
bathrooms,
You-
everything.
Totally. There'd be a huge difference.
Yeah. And so I've been hearing about employees being told, by the end of the year, you're all going to be working from home anyways. So if you want to move to work from home now and aren't already working from home, feel free to do so at some point in the next couple of months, because by the end of 2020, there's going to be no, I'm sure that there will be an office space somewhere with a bunch of executives or some higher ups that are there, but it's going to be significantly scaled back. And so that's one thing that I can already see us, and by us, I again mean the royal us, the royal we, changing and learning from this. And maybe that's given us the push where beforehand we went, it's too abrupt. Like we couldn't just do that. And we were forced into a situation where it's adapt or die. And so they adapted by sending people home anyways. And so people are already at home there. Half your work's done, So I'm curious, do any of you have any expectations about what might be something that we choose to change going forward, whether or not we've had to already, just based on the outcome of what COVID has done to shutdowns and distancing?
Well, I think in combination with that, working from home is just flexible work in general. I think people are realizing that, like, not only can working from home work, but also maybe the typical 9-to-5 shift just isn't what works for people, especially for parents with kids, to be able to offset your working hours could be really handy in order to help with childcare and things like that. And so I think that one of the things that it's bringing in is not just a flexible working from home option, but flexible hours options as well, which is going to completely change the game for a lot of
an increase of opportunities for
exactly
many different groups of people.
Yeah. So if the typical 9-to-5 office job just doesn't work for all of the other variables that you have going on in your life, if there's a parent that you're taking care of or a kid that you're taking care of, or whatever's going on, to be able to have that flexibility might give employment opportunities to a huge segment of people that previously that just 9-to-5 leaving the house option wouldn't work for them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I wonder if that'll lead to a lot more, how we always tend to stereotypically view the customer support as this faceless warehouse full of 100 people sitting at little cubicles, and you can hear them all talking on each other's phones in the background when you're trying to talk to them and phones ringing. But I wonder what that'll do for not just customer service aspects of things, but when the typical person that you interact with on the phone or online is somebody that's just working from home. I wonder just how that'll affect people's mannerisms, just because you're in your house, you don't have to leave your house, you're in a comfortable space. Will that improve the work life? I'm sure studies have been already started because of because of people that have been forced to work from home. I'm sure that they're already looking into how that affects their work habits and whatnot. But yeah, I'd just be curious to know, do they get a better rap because people are maybe more happy because they're working in a place where they're more comfortable? Like, I don't even know what all of the ramifications of that are. It would just, it's something that's cool to think about. Like, where do we go from here?
Yeah.
I think that could even go so far, like if we're going to what that could do in the extreme long term, change the way that we like build our houses, because I've been watching a few different YouTube videos about staying healthy during this time and how you need to have like a separate physical workout space and a separate like recreational space and a separate, this is where you work and only work, and this is where you sleep and only sleep. Because when you mix some of those things, it's just not mentally healthy or physically healthy. And so I think that if we tend as a society to work from home, like even if we did 50-50, like that's a huge amount of people that would need a separate office space in whatever home they're in, and or a separate workout space, whatever their home. So I think that would be interesting too. People would start looking for houses that had more bedrooms or more flexible arrangements and floor plans and stuff like that. So
I wonder how that might marginalize people groups that are just people that don't have the privilege to be able to have a house with multiple different rooms that they can allocate to all of those different things. And if that might then like stunt some even job opportunities just because they know that you're doing your job from your dining room table or from the couch or something like that. I don't know. I don't think that's where we're at yet, because everyone's improvising right now with whatever they got around them. But if that becomes like a long-term culture thing of like, I have my house and it has an office and this is where I do the work things, if that might, the response to that might be different if it's years down the line and you just don't have the option of being able to have a 4-bedroom place.
Yeah, or if you don't have the money to get a place like that, then your mental health, because you can't keep those things separately, possibly goes down too, depending, it's definitely an interesting question. It's a complicated thought process we've got going on here.
If you swing the other direction, it could be possible that you see, if houses are starting to be constructed in the future with that potential of an office being a somewhat mandatory thing in mind, it might become a new normal, just like how the first car that I owned didn't have a USB or an auxiliary input or power sunroof or anything like that. But as I go along, I'm still getting cars that are about as old as the first car was, to where, or maybe a little bit newer, but older in relation to me, to the current year's models, and yet somehow I'm still finding myself upgrading each time I get a new car. And so it might become more and more accessible. Or when you say, where do you work? Well, I work from home. Maybe that's a nothing comment. Maybe do you have a space that you can work at home? Yes, great. You're hired. It might be an open door for people. Who knows? So, but
it also opens up being able to work for anywhere, right? You don't have to work in the city or work with a company that's in the city that you live in. You can work with someone in Denmark, right? Like that's crazy.
If all that this has accomplished is meaning that I don't have to watch YouTube ads about the guys that are on the beach in Jamaica or wherever that are like, 3 years ago I was working like a dead end job and now I have 100 people that I can get to the $100,000 club, and I'm working from this bar or I'm working from this beach or whatever.
Yeah, like I think that relates to kind of what I was thinking in terms of like what might carry over.
Gotcha, yeah.
But it's on a bit of a different tangent from the work side of it. But I do think that something that's going to carry over is going to be how we communicate with people who are not in the room with, in the sense that it used to be like text and email. And I think what we've realized through this is that it is, while it's more energy draining, it is far better to be able to communicate, like at least like voice or if you can have that visual like over Zoom. And so I think one of the things that at least it'll probably change like in my own life would be that I will probably be more likely to like go on a call like with my grandma or something like that, you know, and have that kind of connecting point, rather than, you know, and maybe get a chance to communicate with like friends, family a bit more frequently than I would have normally, instead of just like, well, here's like, you know, my coffee date with them or whatever, you know, like, but then that's like 2 months or whatever in between coffee dates, rather, instead of like maybe a couple weeks in between like a Zoom call, right? So I think frequency of communication might increase, but then also the while we'll still use text and email, I think there will be kind of those chances of, hey, can I just give you a quick call or whatever? Because I think now we're a little bit more used to actually using our phones for that voice component rather than, you know,
which is like going backwards. Almost.
Yeah. Well,
just fun.
Trends happen in cycles anyways.
Yeah.
So, you know,
Yeah,
why
that's
not?
true.
Why not with technology?
So,
Well, I think it was funny because like everyone's tried some sort of a video chat before the pandemic. You know, at some point you did a video chat, but we all just kind of, I think, communally assumed that like they're awkward. I'll just text them.
Yeah,
and
for
be
sure.
Like, hey, how's it going, or whatever.
Yeah.
And even if long conversations are like super long to have over text message and often just like end at a random time that nobody anticipated because you like forgot to text back or whatever, or it wasn't a question so you didn't know what to say. And even though texting has its own unique awkwardness, we kind of just like accepted that one over the video chat option, which has a complete unique set of awkwardness to it. And now that we've all just kind of gotten accustomed to the video chat awkwardness, I think we'll just opt for that more in the future.
Definitely.
Not necessarily over texting, but like definitely more often than we were previously.
I will say that the one thing that I've noted is that before this whole situation or currently during it, I don't use video chats for anything super formal that I want a record of. And that's because with emails and texts, you can always look back and search through your history and find that information again. And I love that about those features of text and email. But I do find myself at the end of a video chat, if it was something that I needed specific information out of, I then sit down and I write an email and send it to everybody involved. And so I don't think we're ever going to lose, like you said, I don't think we're ever going to necessarily choose video over that or lose those aspects of the record keeping. But it definitely has made me a lot more casual towards video chat. Like I just don't even think about it anymore. It's like, oh, jump on a Skype call, or a Facebook Messenger has been promoting their options for video and voice calls, and Zoom has been beefing up its security. You know, every couple of days there's a new update, you know, so everybody's trying these things to keep video up. And even my email was telling me when I logged in on the computer, it's like, hey, guess what? Google has a video service as well. Please use it.
Yeah, that's. And did you get the Zoom email promoting? I don't know. There was something like, if you upgrade to like a year-long, you know, subscription, then we'll knock off like 30%.
Yeah, please. We don't want to lose all of our users.
We don't want to lose you guys. I know it's nice weather and you're not Zooming as much, but please, you know.
Yeah.
What did I do?
Commit to this to the long term.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
No, that was an interesting thought experiment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was fun.
And like I said a few times, I have been thinking about this semi-regularly, and it will become more apparent as we move into later phases and eventually the dissolution of any precautions, or formal precautions anyways, of COVID-19 it'll be on my mind for a while, and probably we'll look back in like 3 more months and realize, oh, what were those people thinking? Like, of course it didn't work like that.
Yeah.
Well, that's the thing is like anytime you predict
People just stayed at home and returned all the dogs to the SPCA or something
Yeah.
terrible like that. Sorry, I'm so sorry.
yeah. But no, like I think that's the thing is like anytime we make any kind of prediction, like this is something that we could all be totally off base, you know, like because like we were experimenting before when we talked about when all this first started, what did we think was going to happen, and our predictions, you know, like it's not like they're 100% accurate. So, but
No.
what will be interesting will be to see how this all plays out. And I mean, like I even had more than what we talked about in terms of how this could affect society. You know, because I do think it touches a bunch of different things, whether like travel, health, conventions, you know, like
Yeah, we
all
didn't
of
even
these.
think about travel.
Yeah, you know, like and so it is going to affect those things, but it'll be interesting to see how will that play out, you know, like or will it not affect things maybe as much as we think. So but yeah, I just
We'll have to see at the 6-month check-in.
yeah, there we
Yeah.
go. But yeah, no, thanks guys for being willing to kind of have this thought experiment and being able to kind of look forward and look to the past. And so yeah, I mean things are still at this time at least seem hopeful. So but in the meantime, we're super happy that we have this podcast and that we can still be able to engage with each other and also with our fans. So thank you all for this time.
We're going to do our best to keep doing episodes for you. So if you'd love to head over to one of our many online presences, wherever you listen to our podcast, and subscribe or follow us. And there are even some messaging options on some of those platforms where you can send us a voice memo, and we'd love to hear from you and just hear what you think or hear if you've got an idea. You can also reach out to us at the Housebound Podcast at gmail.com or visit us on Facebook at the Housebound Podcast. And of course, our main cast hub is anchor.fm/housebound.